You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York.
Mysteries surround us, captivate us, and allure us. From flying saucers to men in black, upright canine cryptids, we explore the strange, the unusual, and the unknown. Join us as we take you on a journey beyond the edge and into the realm of the arcane. Sean Forker, Lon Strickler, Butch Witkowski take you into the world of the unknown. Arcane Radio.
And good evening, everyone. You're listening to Arcane Radio on WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York. I'm Sean the Fork Chop Forker, your host each and every week here on Arcane Radio. And with me I have, as always, the everyman over at Phantoms and Monsters, your favorite Fortean man, Mr. Lon Strickler, and the guy whose eyes are always on the skies, Mr. Butch Witkowski. Gentlemen, good evening.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, it's going. Well, tonight...
Yeah, it's been a week, man, hasn't it?
Oh, it was. I was supposed to be on my way to Mothman this week, but a series of unfortunate events has precluded that from happening. So I'm still here at high atop the kingdom here and ready to get this show kicked off. We got a good show tonight, and I know the audience is definitely waiting to hear from you.
Well, we're, it's been like you said, it's been a crazy week, and, a little good, a little bad. But we've been busy this past weekend. As far as what's going on in Chicago, we got 4 sightings reported this weekend, and as it may be, we got a sighting tonight. So. And it looks like it's an interesting one. The witnesses who are Hispanic, referring to it as the El Diablo Negros, the Black Devil. So I'm going to get that put up after. That was reported in Manuel Navarrete over UFO Clearinghouse. So we're going to get that up on the site tonight after the show.
Yeah, I saw that pop up. Very interesting. So 5 sighting reports now. That's incredible.
Well, you know how these things work. It's usually we get a lull of about a week and a half, 2 weeks, then all of a sudden they just start popping in there. And it was interesting. The other day we had the 2 on the one on last Sunday. They were about an hour apart. They were both phone call reports, about 5.5 miles between each other. I believe it was the same being. It was flying from south to north. And the second, it was interesting because it was actually in between the baseball stadium and Soldier Field, where there were games being played. So it was just kind of strange. So then after that same evening, Manuel got another report of a sighting from the Thursday before at the Lincoln Park Zoo, and this thing was seen circling above the zoo, and several people had seen it. I don't know if it was looking for a snack or not, but it was circling above the zoo. And then tonight we got this other report, which I've got to look into, but I know it's in the Little Village area, which is actually, this sighting is not too far from the international produce market, that one of the early sightings we had, and these witnesses are also calling it an owlman type being. So, it's going to be an interesting report.
Any idea from the witnesses, Lon, about what they feel they're seeing?
It's just it. They don't know what they're seeing. I mean, the description is it's something that's flying, and then when they get a better look at it, it looks like a man with wings or a humanoid with wings. For the most part, they're bat-shaped wings, anywhere from 10 to 12 foot wide. This one tonight, I'm not quite sure I haven't really looked at the report that close, but apparently these wings are somewhat different. And it's kind of lending into what I've been saying. I don't believe this is the same being. I think we've got at least 3 of them right now, if not more. And, there's some variations in the descriptions, but for the most part, I think these people are actually seeing something. It's just bizarre, and it's just a matter of us trying to figure out what this thing is and why it's there, and why Chicago. I mean,
Well, it's the Windy City, if anything. But let's keep in mind that as you know, I've talked about, we really don't know what this is yet. I mean, we have some theories. I see you were asking today in the task force if we could share our feelings about what it is. And Lon, I wish I could, because I don't know. And I keep going back to that week after week that I don't know, because for the consistencies in reports, there's also inconsistencies, right? Not everything's always the same. And it's really hard to type something like that. And just wrapping my head around this, it seems to be more and more confounding every week. And, for the naysayers out there who say this is, people aren't being skeptical enough, I don't know how more skeptical we can be in saying that we're just reporting on what people are sending in. Like, we're just putting it out there. I don't think we've come to any conclusions yet.
Yeah, we're putting it out there. That's no doubt about that. But the thing is, we've got to start interpreting what's going on and trying to make a connection. I don't know. I mean, I've been doing research. I'm researching for this book, and I've been going into other stuff. And and by the way, this weekend at the Festival, friend and colleague Rosemary Ellen Golly is going to be making a presentation on Saturday at 2:00 of this of these Chicago phantom sightings, which should be interesting. She's going to put her take on it and some of the things we've been discussing about it, and kind of making a public presentation of this flap. So that'll be interesting to see what kind of feedback we get with that. And but at this time, of course, and our guests tonight, Tobias and Emily, they're part of the task force as well. So when they come on, I'm quite sure they're going to give their thoughts on what's going on. But this weekend in particular, and this week, we've been kind of bouncing things around on the thread, trying to get some better idea of what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and the nice thing is it's a menagerie of folks in there with varying different levels of experience and different areas of experience who all have good ideas. I'm very pleased to be associated with that fine group of individuals in that particular task force. It's a great idea, Lon. I commend you for it, because I think this is how we solve these mysteries when they pop up. And it's a really good, solid group of individuals. What else have we got, though, besides this flying phantom? I saw it over the weekend.
Oh, did you?
And I saw it with my daughter, 14, and she didn't sleep that night. Which,
okay.
I always thought that was, so full of hyperbole that, it scared me so bad I couldn't sleep. She legitimately couldn't sleep. So I got in trouble from her mother because I took my daughter to see a movie. She couldn't sleep, and she ended up missing school the next day. So
is that right?
Yeah. So I caught the heat for that. So now she's
maybe you can explain the premise of the movie a bit.
So, the movies, if you read the Stephen King book, it's a group of children in this town that are experiencing this strange I don't know if you would call it thought form, strange type creature that manifests itself as your greatest fear, and seems to be eating these children or captivating them for a period of time before it goes back to sleep again. It's a good movie. I don't want to give too much of it away because it's really good. I enjoyed it. Now, I saw the miniseries. You know, there's only so much you can do on a miniseries, right?
Right.
ABC had to do what it could do to still be on television after airing that miniseries. This movie is a little bit more sinister, a little bit more dark, very disturbing, but very good. And, you know, somebody asked me, is it like every other horror remake that they've done? And I have to say, absolutely not. They put a lot of money in it. They had a lot of good acting in it. There are parts of the movie that'll make you laugh, parts of it that'll scare the crap out of you, and parts of it that'll make you cry. Even I got a little teary-eyed there at one part at the end. Don't go judging me out there. I'm a little soft. And it was just a really, really good movie. I enjoyed it. And if you haven't seen it yet, make sure you do so. But in doing that, as we talked about last year for a certain amount of time, guys, phantom clown sightings, right? These weird people dressing up as clowns, standing alongside the road, scaring the dickens out of people. I have a feeling we're going to start seeing more of them again.
Well, you mean with the Halloween season coming up?
No, not just that. With the release of the movie It, you know, there's always these people that need a piece of the attention. But as I always caution about, if you're out there listening, folks, and you think this is a good idea, please don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of you will inevitably be killed, and that will not be a good thing. So if you feel like dressing up as a clown to scare the crap out of people, do so at your own risk. But listen, old Fortean told you not to. That's a real dumb idea.
Well, I think the Pennsylvania State Police had put out a warning a couple weeks ago about people dressing up as clowns and scaring the hell out of people.
Well, I have it right here in front of me, and the notice goes as follows. With the fall of 2017 upon us, it is anticipated that similar creepy clown sightings could be reported starting as soon as September, in part due to the fact that the movie It will be released in theaters on 9/8/2017. The movie, which is adapted from a Stephen King novel by the same name, portrays an evil demon who takes on the shape of a clown named Pennywise that stalks kids from within the sewers and kills them when they least expect it. The Bulletin offers a list of resources for residents to use to report any suspicious clown sightings, including their terrorism tip lines. So if you're dressing up as a clown, keep in mind you could also end up on a watch list. So
be a terrorist, a clown terrorist. That's
one more thing to think about.
Yeah.
Bozo means business this year, guys. So people be safe.
So, Butch, you haven't seen any of these clowns, have you?
No, but there was a red balloon tied to my mailbox this morning.
That was me.
Oh.
Yeah, you made that 3-hour drive. Made sure you could see that this morning.
Well, I was going to fill the mailbox full of pierogies, but I ate them on my way down. I'm sorry, Butch.
You're forgiven.
Well, you know, it's, I don't know. Yeah, you know what, Butch? I'm going to have something to send over you tonight, too. I got an email today from someone who used to live in northern Lancaster County who's has taken some interest in the phenomena that you have been reporting on and we have been reporting on for, I don't know, it's been a while now, since last fall. So,
well, I did go to the farm today.
Oh, did you?
Yep.
Is that code?
Our friends.
What's that?
The distortions are still there.
There.
Both on top of the dirt mound.
Wow. Well, you know, it's interesting. That case, we had a friend of mine, Delise, who used to do RV work with me, and she's got a group in Australia. And, well, she does RV on her own, too, as well. But she did a report for us, for Butch and I, for this phenomenon in northern Lancaster County. And it was an interesting report, and it kind of explained a lot of what was going on. Sure. And her and I had discussed a little bit, talked a bit this past week. And when she gets time, you know, in her schedule, she's going to conduct an RV with her group and on this phenomenon in Chicago. So maybe we'll get a little more insight on what's going on. But she's a filmmaker, so she's been on the road and on locations. And so it's kind of, I haven't been really able to get a hold of her, but she said she's going to look into it. So hopefully we can get something from her. And like I said, anything we can get, we're going to look into.
Yeah,
so we've been to the farm. Go ahead, Butch.
No, I was just going to say that report she sent on what Lon and I were looking into down here in northern Lancaster County. I mean, it floored me because, I didn't know a whole lot about RVing.
Mm-hmm.
And I read that report and I'm like, wow, that's amazing considering the people who are doing this are on a continent way far away.
Yeah, I have had several readers in Facebook want to know about remote viewing and get an idea of it. And I actually posted an old case from 2010 that I was involved in, and just kind of give a description. And it was actually a case in the area, the town of Leatherhead, which is in Surrey, just south of London. And I was involved with that case, and there was a on-site group as well. But it kind of gives you an idea of what needs to be done when you're doing the case. So if you're interested in it, just go to the blog. It's titled "Remote View: A House in Surrey." So it's got a lot of good information in there. Everybody still there?
Still here.
Yeah. Hey, there we go.
Okay, what happened, Sean?
I don't know. It's a gremlin.
It's been that way pretty short. That's just the way things have been going.
Anyhow, until I met you, Lon, I didn't know a thing about RVing. I thought it was something you did when you went to Camping World to buy the supplies and get started. So I'm glad that you educated me a little bit along the way. RVing, folks, it's the communication of the future. If you can do it, I can. So we've had phantom clowns. Lon's been to the farm, and Butch has been to the farm. Is anything still going on there? Like, you still getting regular reports from this place? Because I haven't been there yet.
Yeah. Still hears noises out around the pond. The concrete floor has still not been poured. It was supposed to be poured back in January. So that's 7 months ago. Still not poured. Some of the equipment that showed up from California that they were waiting on was wrong. So I'm kind of leaning toward what Lon said, that if it is what we think it is, guardians or some type of entities watching over that particular piece of ground, which is quite evident from the storm we had, and they didn't get any damage, that things are going to work out real well for that new operation that they're trying to set up there. I'm kind of in agreement with Lon that it's going to fail.
Yeah, I don't have a good feeling about it. I mean, when I was there, I just didn't like the feel of everything. And, of course, I'm sitting out, you and my son were behind me, and I walked up a little ahead, and I started hearing these drum beats on my right side and chanting and all this other stuff. And I'm there, what the heck is going on here? And, there's something about that area. There's something about that ground that's just not right. And, Delicia's report kind of gave us a little bit of a sense of what's going on there. But, quite frankly, we really still don't know what it is. But these entities that are supposedly guarding the area, they're still there. And they're showing up on the FLIR, so who knows?
Hey, Lon, what about this Saskatchewan Bigfoot footage that came out that I saw posted on Phantoms and Monsters?
Yeah, I looked at that. It seems that it's the real deal, to be honest with you. I don't think there was any type of hoaxing involved there. These people are familiar with Saskatchewan. It's a lot of flat area, a lot of farmland. I mean, there are woods and stuff, rolling hills, but this family was on the road. I guess they were, driving down the road, and they caught a glimpse of this big, hairy whatever out in the field, and they got a picture of it from maybe mid-torso up, but damn, it looked like it to me. I'm telling you, it was an excellent video. What'd you think about it?
Interesting. Of course, they're never clear, because that would be amazing. Always get our hopes up for Bigfoot footage that's always clear, but it always ends up the same.
Mm-hmm.
I can really say Saskatchewan, so you can be rest assured I've never been there. But interesting nonetheless. We get closer and closer to getting some really good footage one day. I think everybody that is interested in the subject should go out, and we should try to get a group discount on some good photography classes. Let's see if we can.
Well, start handing out real good cameras to everybody instead of just cell phones. And that's another thing, though. We run into doing this thing in Chicago. Everybody's like, well, where are the pictures at? Where are the pictures? Well, there you go. How many good discernible pictures have you gotten of Bigfoot? Let alone something flying around Chicago.
Well, discernible pictures of Bigfoot depends on your level. Depends on your point of view, right? Some people hold the Patterson-Gimlin film to be the Holy Grail, and some people, still say whatever, and it's not that great. I mean, can we all just be honest and say it's good, not great?
It is very good. I mean, it's a very good representation of what people are saying, and it's probably, in my opinion, probably the best. That one and the Freeman film, I think, are probably the two best.
The Freeman film is fantastic, but it's still garbage in terms of quality, right? I think it's got great emotion, and you can build a story off it, and you can be involved. But if you were to be completely objective, to say based upon 100% of what you're viewing in this film, it looks scary, it looks out of place, it looks big, but it's still not the best quality. And until we get it, it's all going to be subjective. And I hate to beat this bloody drum every week and talk about it, but for the love of goodness, can we get some good equipment out there? Please, people, to save the money and don't do this on the cheap. There's tons of people that want to be the Bigfooter budget friendly investigator, but sometimes you just can't. And then there's, of course, Lon, I contradict myself, and I've said to you and Butch many times that we could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on equipment, and it doesn't mean it's going to work.
No, I mean, if you're going out and looking for Bigfoot, there's a good chance you're never going to see him. It's one of these things that, well, you're not expecting and it shows up. I know that's how it was in my case. And, you're just not going to see it.
And you also have to be at the ready and with equipment that's calibrated and ready and set up and ready to go. And the fact of the matter is, it just doesn't happen. You can take good shots of grizzly bears. Why? Because grizzly bears are there. And if you aren't paying attention too long, you'll be their supper. But you have a chance to focus in and get in those sharp teeth before they crush against your skull. You have time. You don't necessarily have that in the 10 to 15 seconds someone experiences a Bigfoot. And that's the problem. And you're going to even have less time when you see some winged creature flying around the sky in Chicago, because, capturing something in the sky with the lighting and everything else is its whole nother ball game. I would never be prepared to do something like that. Photography is an art, and I can only imagine that getting somebody involved in the field that is as passionate about that art, that would be a diamond in the rough right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's, we're dealing with people that have just never expected to see something like this. And, they're not trained to take a good photograph, let alone with a cell phone. And, this thing pops up. The first thing they're thinking is, what is it? And not that I'm going to take a picture of it, first of all, so that's usually not what crosses their mind. And these sightings, for the most part, have been very fleeting. So by the time to think about it, it's usually gone or so far away you can't get a decent picture of it.
Well, and the same goes, and Butch, you can chime in here at any time you'd like, because, it just seems like even those schmucks that think that, I've got this great gun, I'm going to bag me a Sam Squanch. Yeah, good luck, buddy. Good luck trying to pull that trigger when you've got this giant monster breathing down at you. Even with a camera, people I've talked to, Lon, people you've talked to, these people freeze up in the moment.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Well, all the cameras that we use for the bipedal investigations, I mean, they're all, well, first of all, very expensive, but they're all automatic. They're taking photographs every half second. So I've tried to remove the human element away from the cameras as best I could. And that goes for the FLIR devices, the infrared devices, and now some of the digital equipment has still got to be, human held, human aimed, human fired. But for the wide angle continuous shots, I just took the human element away from it, because it's like you said, you could have the greatest camera in the world, but when you're looking at whatever you're looking at, and you're more interested in seeing what it is and if it's going to come chasing before you're thinking of pushing that button or pulling that trigger. So I think one of the things that folks do, and I'm not a Bigfoot researcher, is that, they change their research areas almost like they change their shorts. 1 week they're here, 1 week they're there, and, they're chasing down nothing. Why they're not going after a research area where they've had numerous reports is beyond me. I don't get it. I would think, well, I know that if I have 5 reports in one area, I'm surely not going to go to the next county where I don't have any reports looking for it. I'm going to go to that area where there have been reports and try to get as close to those reports as I can in the area. And, of course, then you have the other type of reports where, like up in your area, where you have strange noises, howls, screams up in the woods. Now, that's a place where it needs to start as a research area, where you've got to set everything up and then kind of hopefully hear what you're hearing, or try to hear what some people are telling you they're hearing. But the more you can back away from the human element, the better off you are. I mean, there are great cameras out there. There are great sound listening devices, information from things walking on the ground that are fed into a computer that you're not even near. It's either wired into the truck, or it's out on a table, or it's in the tent, or it's in a shelter. The more that people stay away from trying to lift that $2,500 brand new Nikon they got and take that fuzzy picture, then they get all upset because they spent $2,500 for a fuzzy picture. Well, it's not the camera, it's the individual. And that's the part that's a little hard to get through to some people sometimes. But I think the way we're doing it is the right way, and that's the way we're going to continue until we can come up with something else. And I'm not about to dig any bear traps.
Well, guys, the best part about everything is you don't have to invest in fancy equipment to listen to us each and every week here on WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York. Arcane Radio comes to you each and every week here on this lovely channel and on iHeartRadio. So we're glad to be part of the WCJV family. And tonight, guys, our guests, the Singular Fortean Society, Tobias Wayland and Emily Bartos. This week we welcome them to Arcane Radio. Tobias is a passionate Fortean and outspoken paranormal agnostic who graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He spent the last 9 years actively investigating the unusual. Emily is an ardent craftsperson and devoted monster enthusiast who graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay in Madison. She is also an accomplished artist, designer, and photographer. Tobias and Emily are also part of the Chicago Phantom Task Force, and they can be found at singularfortean.com, and we'll put that on the website and in the link. Guys, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
Not as excited as we are. Butch, Lon, you still with me? I heard a little wind there.
No, I'm still here.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for coming on the program, and thanks for being part of the Chicago Task Force. It's been great to interact with you guys in there. So let's get this started off simply. Why don't you both tell us how you got started in all this?
Sure. Well, this is sort of a lifelong passion for me. I grew up as kind of a weird kid, having some weird experiences that were unexplained, and that led me to my local library and being able to read books by John Keel and Lauren Coleman and people like that, and read, or Brad Steiger, reading about other people's experiences. It really sparked this passion in me to explore the unexplained. Not just to figure out the unusual things that had happened to me, but just to explore this weird, wild world that we all share.
I would say my background started more as like a curiosity. I definitely was very interested in science fiction growing up, and of course, being an artist, I have a bit of an imagination, so the possibility of monsters, aliens, or whatever being out there was something that definitely captivated me. And then when I met Tobias, I was able to kind of take that more seriously, and I've learned a lot, and it's been really awesome.
This is a fantastic subject and fantastic field to be in terms of research. I had the privilege of interviewing Brad years ago. What a fantastic guy, very knowledgeable, and really kind of inspired me to push a little further, and kind of fitting to kind of talk about John Keel, given where we're at so close to the Mothman Festival. I'm seeing John Keel quotes posted up everywhere.
Yeah, well, definitely, and obviously working. I can't tell you how many times our own audience, at this point, has drawn parallels between, Point Pleasant and the 60s. Really, even earlier, if you want to go back to like the 2011 sightings, or I think there are some even earlier than that. But anyway, it's interesting to me because people want to draw all of these parallels between the Point Pleasant flap and now here in Chicago. And I'll just say, it's similar to me in that you've got people seeing but what we're really missing, in my mind anyway, is sort of all of the related phenomena. Like if you read Keel's Mothman prophecies, and he's talking about time slips and men in black, just all of this other weird stuff, strange telephone calls, like giving him prophetic messages and stuff, and I just haven't seen a whole lot of that. I mean, I feel like there's been about the same amount of UFO sightings that you normally get over Lake Michigan, which seems to be a pretty decent amount. But where's the rest of the weirdness here to really be able to relate the Chicago thing to the actual Mothman?
That's a fair question, and it's not something I've actually kind of thought about until you really brought that up. And I guess one of the things that's got me to bias is, does there really have to be a sinister edge to this? Do you think people could just be seeing something unexplained? Does it have to be a harbinger?
Absolutely not. It doesn't have to be anything other than strictly what people are reporting, as far as I'm concerned. And nobody knows what that is. Very early on, I had to run through the usual suspects, as it were, as far as possible misidentifications, so I was comparing early reports to, owls that might be indigenous to the area. The whole thing sort of kicked off during like the sandhill crane migration and all of that. And, I just reached a point where it came down to, am I just going to dismiss these reports, or am I going to listen to these witnesses? Because if you listen to the witnesses, it couldn't be any of that stuff that I just said. But again, to your point, that doesn't mean that it's anything beyond what they're reporting either. So really, all we know right now, it seems is that people are reporting some sort of winged creature, and different people get different views of it, different angles for different lengths of time, which I think has led to a sort of inconsistency in descriptions, which can be difficult at best sometimes to sort of build any sort of theory off of. Like, is it, like Lon has mentioned, he suspects that there could be, several different creatures, which is a possibility. Or is it that, we've got minor inconsistencies in reports because of how people are interpreting, the stimulus that they're perceiving, and they're just kind of describing the same thing in a slightly different way.
Well, perception is 99% of it, and I realize that. I've been presenting a lot of different theories the past couple of days, and even the thought form, zoo form, topo theory as a possibility. And if that may very well be the case in some of the singular sightings, especially later on, as people start to realize that, this thing is flying around Chicago, I hope I can see it, or, maybe some type of stimulus, like a large bird or something is seen, their mind just makes out that, hey, maybe this is the phantom. Maybe this is what people are seeing. And, the mind plays a funny tricks on you. But as far as thought form and manifestation of an unknown being or a strange entity, that very well may come into play as well. So, we're open to everything. And I think that we're at the point now we're going to almost have to be like I stated earlier, it's a Fortean exercise. We kind of got down the rabbit hole and just try to pull out something that seems plausible, though I don't know if we're going to be able to do that.
Oh, sure, and that makes a lot of sense. It was Ford who famously said, right, like a one measures a circle beginning anywhere. So you can pretty much pick where you want to start. As far as in investigating these. Like I'll tell you though, and like you do make a really good point though, because I do wonder sometimes if maybe from even like a social media marketing standpoint, if there isn't just such a thing as doing our job too well and getting the word out there too much, and then maybe you don't necessarily have people purposely hoaxing things, but if it isn't somewhere that people are seeing this, how much more likely are they to interpret a large bird or even a relatively normal sized bat or something that they see very quickly as something supernatural. So who knows? That certainly doesn't explain obviously the earlier sightings.
Right.
Like your Oz Park, obviously, like that's easily up there for me because of the credibility of the witness and what she described. I don't think it's very easily explained. So there's definitely something to this, and I don't ever want to imply that I think that it's capable of all being just easily explained by something mundane. Definitely not. So.
Well, I think that's one thing we talked about together was, and Lon, this at first, is I was worried that when we started talking publicly about all this, we would get a lot of reports that, just weren't kosher, right? That were just kind of bull and distracting us from what's really out there. But I think Lon and everybody's been able to do a pretty good job of weeding out all that. And I think it's just, being able to be subjective enough to really whittle it down. And, not that subjective enough is dangerous, right? Because that puts the projective out there that we're just, just doing just the right amount of subjectivity to be dangerous. No, I'm pretty harsh when it comes to this stuff. And I just want everybody out there to know that's listening that, we're taking this real seriously. This isn't just to build up a whole case of sightings to write books or do public appearances. This is to really look at what witnesses, actual people, are sending in to us to investigate.
Right. And that's something that I've really tried hard to convey to our audience, because I do get a lot of questions from people on social media, and they're often very repetitive. And one of the big ones is, why are all of these reports only coming into Phantoms and Monsters and UFO Clearinghouse? And why should I trust Lon Strickler? Why should I trust Manuel Navarrete? Why should I believe any of this? And, one of the things that we've tried to do at the Singular Fortean Society, as one of our dual focuses being Fortean journalism, is try to present to our audience the fact that regardless of whether or not they believe in this phenomenon, regardless of what they think the source of it is, the people investigating it are absolutely handling this in a way that deserves their respect. And you're absolutely right. That is something that I cannot convey strongly enough.
Lost a little bit there.
Yeah, good old Skype tonight.
Communication of the future, folks. Yeah. Now. And that's how Skype works, because it wouldn't be a live show if Skype wouldn't, throw us a curveball every now and then.
Well, this is something that's kind of, and I said from the beginning, it's good to get the information out there, and that maybe some media sources pick it up. But my worry was if it would go viral, and that was going to be a problem. I mean, I guess in a way it has gone viral, but it hasn't really gotten to the point where we're interviewing with the large newspapers, the large media in Chicago and other places. We're just not doing that. We're getting I think we're just getting just enough. And I think that's what's keeping all the possible fake reports from coming in. I'm not going to sit here and say that every report we have gotten is not truth. Is fake or some type of hoax. We have discounted a few reports already, but for the most part, and when you talk to these people, that what they're saying to you is that, first of all, they've seen something. Second of all, they don't know what it was they saw. All they can do is describe it. And third, they don't change their story. And that, like I've said before, this is one aspect of this whole case that's kind of surprised myself and Manuel and others. And that, we very rarely run into something like this. Manuel's used to talking about UFOs to witnesses. I know Butch talks to witnesses all the time, UFOs and other phenomena. And of course, I just talk to anybody who contacts me, to be honest with you. But it's very rare that I run into witnesses that are susceptible to changing their story. And that hasn't been going on here. It's almost like this thing leaves an imprint on people, and they're sticking to what they originally report.
Yeah, and I think that's very telling. Because it certainly does seem to be the case. The few witnesses that I've spoken to directly, they're nothing if not sincere. And I started when I started investigating. I was a volunteer field investigator with MUFON for 5 years, and I had interviewed a lot of people during that time, and you could always kind of tell the people who wanted, their story to be true a little too much, or, just weird little red flags like that. And, I haven't had that experience with anybody so far in this flap. It really seems like if anything, people are, questioning what they've seen to a large enough degree that how could you not take them seriously? Frankly,
Yeah.
like what would a hoaxer have to gain by calling you up and saying, I don't know what I just saw? Like, what's the fun in that?
Yeah, that doesn't happen a lot when somebody will call you and say, well, first of all, when they do call me, they think they've got the wrong number, because it's not like I answer the phone, this is Kolchak, tell your story. I just answered Stricklers, and I've got the right number. Is this the guy the monster reporter, the guy who does the stories on the blog? I said, yeah, you got the right guy. And, well, you're not going to believe what I saw. And that's, invariably kind of what they say to you, first of all. But, when they start going into the description, you can tell what what the deal is with them.
Right.
We had a hotline set up at one point, Lon. I think people just chose to call you anyhow.
Yeah, they did.
They wanted to hear that voice.
I guess it is. It's interesting. Voice. Well, the big problem with putting your telephone number out there, it's good that I can talk directly to witnesses, but in this case in particularly, and because of the type of phenomena, and then the association with the Mothman and the so-called harbinger of disaster thing, I've got people calling me all the time just asking me what's going on, and that they're scared, and they're scared. People are terrified of this thing, and not the actual being, but what this may represent. What's going to happen in Chicago, So, that's been, I guess it's not really been a drawback. I get a good sense of the way the city is, the word on the street, how it's getting around. But people know about it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Right. And so, Lon, now when you're talking about, speaking to witnesses and they're terrified of what this represents. Now, I guess, is that something that they're questioning because of, say, they're familiar with the Silver Bridge disaster, or is there something else going on there?
Well, the witnesses themselves, for the most part, don't know nothing about Mothman, which is, of course, we're in that field, so we know all about that. But it's not something that just regular people know about. Right. And then when you start telling them about, and they also don't know about the other sightings. When you talk to them, that they're quite surprised when you tell them about how many sightings there have been. It's less now than it used to be because the word's getting out. But those people that call me who are not witnesses and want to know what the sighting of this being and why it's in Chicago and what's it represent. Well, they know about the Mothman. And they know about the Mothman prophecies and all the hubbub after the Silver Bridge collapsed, and the theories, and they're truly scared. They are absolutely terrified, and it's I don't get as many calls as I was there for a while, but I was getting between 10 and 20 calls a day, easy. I mean, even in the middle of the night, people are calling me, and it's. I kind of feel sorry for them in a way, but I have been trying to dispel the fear, of those people who call me and want to know what's going on. And of course, I've been saying all along on the radio shows and whatever, when I get an interview, I just don't buy into this harbinger of disaster. I'm not going to say something's not going to happen. And something very well may happen, but I don't think it's connected with what people are saying.
Oh, sure. It's Chicago. Something's always going to happen.
Absolutely.
Can we take a minute there and just think about this, though? We assume Mothman because of the Silver Bridge collapse, all the sightings leading up to it and then not much after. But, what if it's just coincidence? You know, they had these sightings leading up to it. The bridge happened. As everybody's so focused on this disaster and the bad feelings, nobody's just going to report this stuff anymore.
That's it.
It's going to take its back burner. Like, is it really a harbinger? I don't know. There's a lot of coincidence. Things happen. I don't know. I'm just not sold that it was the one predicting doom. But then there's all these sighting reports that happened around Chernobyl and blah, 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 that we can't confirm. So it just adds more to the lore.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tobias.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I was really just going to agree more or less. I mean, as far as I know, the Point Pleasant sightings were the only incidents of any flying humanoid being reported prior to a disaster. So it really sounds like the rest of those, cases like Chernobyl famously and others, as just a form of folklore. It's just narrative building around these events. And I'll say, as far as the whole Mothman, harbinger sort of idea, if I remember correctly, and somebody, will have to correct me if I get this wrong. It's been a while since I read this book, but I know that Keel had been saying that, he'd been receiving these prophetic phone calls from some mysterious, unnamed, possibly ultra terrestrial source, and that it had predicted some sort of disaster. But I think that it got the city and location wrong, and then he saw that the Silver Bridge had collapsed, near Point Pleasant, and had made that connection. But yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible that it was absolutely a total coincidence, and he just happened to make that connection on his own. So who knows?
Yeah, I don't fault the people of Point Pleasant and even Keel. When this large number of people died at the Silver Bridge collapse, 46 people, that was a huge shock for that small community. And, since this Mothman phenomena had been going on for a year prior to that, it was almost like it was a perfect excuse to use as to what happened. It was a prophecy of some type. And, I don't know. I do know the bridge had been inspected about a year prior to the collapse. When he actually started looking into it, there were issues with that bridge. And, when it did collapse and all the people died, I think it was kind of something to fall back on with this so-called harbinger. And, as far as with the Chernobyl, the Blackbird of Chernobyl, which I did write about, a post on the blog this week, that's almost, the whole thing was almost like a Soviet fantasy that you run into once in a while with the paranormal during the Soviet time, the Soviet years. It's it kind of got any type of disaster, anything that went wrong, always started going into the folklore aspect of it. And I think that's what happened with Chernobyl. I think people really started coming out of the woodwork saying that, well, we saw this huge black bird beforehand, and, that it was flying around and nobody knew what. Well, I don't really believe all that actually happened. And, there have been other disasters where after the fact, people come forward and saying, well, we saw this flying being. Fukushima was one. The bridge collapse in Minneapolis was another. You do hear about this. I have reported on some older incidents where people swore that they saw these flying humans. A lot of back then they were calling them angels, as some type of harbinger of something bad to happen, and invariably something would happen, so they recalled these things. Well, I don't know. I don't know if that's really what happened, but it does make for a good story. There's no doubt about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, if nothing else, I mean, basically everything we cover and talk about, it is all absolutely just fantastic stories. There's no doubt about it.
Oh yeah, I mean, Keel, he was. I don't think he was an investigator as far as, not going ahead and kind of embellishing on a story. I mean, of course, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in the Point Pleasant area after the bridge collapse, and also during the time that the Mothman was being seen. There were UFO activity, the Men in Black, all kinds of other stuff. And, the area itself, and people who've been down there can tell you, it's a bizarre place. Yeah, if you just go outside the town itself and start looking around and talking to people that live there, they have experienced a lot of bizarre things over the years. This dogman phenomena or upright canine phenomena, I mean, Point Pleasant and Mason County are not exempt for that. There's a lot of strange things that have been going on there for years. I get a lot of reports from that area and up and down the Ohio River Valley. It just seems to be an overall hot spot for strange activity.
Well, that's very interesting, and obviously there could be something to that. I mean, we do seem to find these window areas, from time to time in different locations, and I'll tell you, I'm not real familiar with a lot of the other associated phenomena that people have said, they've seen in that area. So when you're talking about, talking to people from that area, and they're talking about all of this weird stuff that isn't at all Mothman related, like, what are we talking about? Ghost stories, UFO sightings.
Well, Manuel, he's in the chat room tonight, and he just asked, did the sightings die off after the Silver Bridge collapse? Yeah, they did in degree, but there were still sightings. I don't know how many sightings that there actually were. They were fairly well concentrated in one area, which was the West Virginia Ordnance area, and up and down the road there. I think that was Potter Creek Road. But anyway, and there's still sightings there. Occasionally there's a sighting of something odd. I'm working with a couple now who were actually at the TNT or West Virginia Ordnance area several years ago, and started doing EVP sessions inside one of those cones. Well, what happened was, and I believe their story 100%, they picked something up, something attached to them, some type of entity, some type of energy attached to them. And they've been going through hell for the last 7-8 years or so. And after that had occurred, the husband of this couple actually had an encounter with a flying being. So, it's, I don't think it's all, I don't think there is some conjecture with all this phenomena, but there's something going on as far as the phenomena itself. And I do believe with what's going on in Chicago, there very well may be some type of tie-in with the Mothman phenomena and any other type of flying being, incident. But I do believe that my thought is that if these things are coming from another dimension, another realm of some type, I believe they're being summoned. And for who are summoning, what's summoning them, that's hard to tell, but they do act like a vanguard. We talk about vanguard beings, just like the thing with northern Lancaster County, that these are vanguards. These are, something that's guarding an area. Well, maybe we're getting a vanguard here in Chicago.
Well, you don't have to be from another dimension to enjoy great paranormal talk radio and entertainment on WCJV, Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York, and on iHeartRadio. How about that?
Yeah, very good. You're getting really good at this.
I know. I love this. My favorite part of my job now.
So, anyway, I know you wanted to talk about some other things, Tobias and Emily. What else did you want to present to the audience?
Well, yeah, sure. Actually, well, I feel like I've been doing all of the talking for both of us, which, once you get to know us, you'll find out I do way too often. So I know Emily has done some really, really interesting research, sort of investigating photographic evidence, actually specifically recently for this Chicago sighting. So I think she wants to talk about that a little bit, right?
Oh, great. Because the sketches she produced, and really, I hope she does some more, because I would love to be able to put them on the site and in the book, because they were so well done. They really represented what the witnesses saw.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, and that's one of the many things that she brings to the table, because honestly, left to my own devices, our website, it wouldn't look like it does. I can tell you that. So yeah, I mean, having her and her ability, to, create these images for our articles, and her design work, it's proven invaluable to us, really. And obviously, we are happy to share that with the larger community. And actually, yeah, I guess I can mention this real quick, since I don't think I got it out of the way before. At the Singular Fortean Society, we have a dual focused mission, really. So on the one hand, we've got the Fortean journalism and investigation, and we love doing that. But we also have community outreach, because we do believe very strongly in building a stronger paranormal and Fortean community. We've met so many talented, interesting people, and unfortunately, like they just end up spread out all in their own little pockets, and they just don't have necessarily like the means or maybe the background to really get their voice out there. So that's something else that we really strongly believe in, which is why, Emily loves to help with design in any way she can. She loves, taking the pictures and examining them and all of that fun stuff. And then we've also started a couple of interesting community outreach programs. So we've got our paranormal art portal. Do you want to tell people what that's about?
Sure. So the Paranormal Art Portal is basically a database of artists whose subject matter is within the field. And it's pretty broad. We've got like a couple of them who kind of have like a more comic style with cryptids. We've got a couple horror or like photographers of spooky places. So how it works is there's a listing, and you can find this by going to our website. At the top menu, there is a society tab, and then you can just go down to Paranormal Art Portal, and it'll list all the artists. But what we like to do especially is every month we feature a different artist. So we'll feature their work on social media and tell a little bit about it, but then we'll also do a blog write-up showcasing this artist for that month. And of course, after their month of like 15 minutes of fame or whatever is over, their work is still in the database. We'll still be in touch with them, and who knows what else this might develop into. But so far, we've met some really unique, talented artists, and everybody brings something different. So I think it'll be really cool to see how this grows and where it can like take that field and so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we really have met so many talented artists, and I think one of the unfortunate things, specifically speaking to like the experience of of artists trying to present their work on the internet, it's really hard. It's difficult for them to find a platform, you know, where they're not just sort of drowned out in the white noise of the internet and a million other artists. So any chance we can get to help build community that way, we definitely do. We also have recently started our paranormal media portal as well, because we do have a lot of friends with podcasts, and we're making more all the time, and hopefully we can host you guys in there too at some point. More people know about Arcane Radio. But yeah, that's something that it's very similar to the art portal.
Right.
It's really in the same vein where we'd like to be able to create a platform where we can essentially provide links to people's podcasts. I mean, it sounds simple because it is, but I think it's just a really good way to inform our audience about podcasts that they might not otherwise find out about, but then also let any of our friends and colleagues with podcasts maybe expand their audience a little bit and get their messages out. So
well, and the internet's such a big place, you never know what's out there, so I think it's nice to have like a one-stop shop where everybody can kind of be like aware of each other, and like I think forming these connections is very beneficial to everybody in this field.
Definitely.
You're going to inspire me to get my sketch pad and watercolors out again. I haven't done that in so long. It's interesting. I've always, I take these reports and people send sketches and artwork into me, and I sit there and think, I could probably represent what people are seeing, but it takes time, and I just never do it again. But I guess I'll have to try to start.
Lon, any time you want to be featured in that art portal, you are absolutely welcome. So we would love to have you.
Are you moving past finger painting, Lon?
Yeah, I've been past that. Believe me, I used to do landscapes a long time ago, and my now deceased wife used to try to get me to go into it a little further, but with working and everything, it just wasn't enough time to do much of that, plus what I'm doing now. But maybe I'll start doing it again.
Just going to have to call you Lon Monet, huh?
Yeah.
I love artistic Lon. Folks, keep an eye out. He's going to be the next Rembrandt out there.
Yeah, right.
Or too late.
Well, let me ask you, Emily, what's your take on what's going on in Chicago?
I mean, I really don't know what to think, but I feel like there's been once a month I have a column in our blog called Fortean Photography. So recently, I think it was like last week, I did a write-up on 2 photos that came from this recent flap.
Yeah, it was a great article.
One of them, I was convinced, I was like, this is a real photograph. This is genuine. And then the other one, that's fake, as far as I'm concerned. So it's like interesting. Like, I mean, you guys were talking a little bit about it earlier. Lots of people who witness these things don't necessarily have their camera out and ready, and it's at a far place away, but already 50% is fake and 50% is real, which is what I find interesting. And the various descriptions are also interesting because, like, I think the most common is probably the bat wing that people examine, but also like flying squirrel shape has been seen, which is interesting because those are kind of, they have similar like structure, I would say, like a bat and a flying squirrel, but with the flying squirrel shape, you're kind of losing the jagged edges of the bat wing, which I think is interesting. Sure. Because that's something that, like, I think that's an easy descriptor that, like, would somebody have forgotten to say that?
Right. Well, you're familiar with artistic concepts, so what do you think? You think that people are seeing the same thing, or you think that there's a good possibility that these are different beings?
I mean, it's hard to say with how many there are. Perhaps there's a few different ones, but whether or not they're different species or not are hard to say. But I do know that people interpret things differently.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to say whether or not they're different or if people just see things a different way. And they might not even understand like animal anatomy to a point to where they're able to accurately describe it.
You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York.
Emily and Tobias from the Singular Fortean team. Guys, thanks for being on the horn with us tonight. And Lon, it's all yours, big guy.
Well, when we got done talking last, we were discussing your artist portal, paranormal artist portal. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm not sure if this made the show last week, but basically it is a database of all paranormal and Fortean artists that have come forward and want us to share their work via social media. And we do a blog write-up every week, but our website also serves as like a one-stop shop to kind of see who everybody is and link back to their websites as well.
Yeah, and it's something that, it really speaks to, the half of our dual focus. That's the community outreach aspect of what we do. Because there is something that we had noticed, and I think I may have touched on this a little earlier, but especially when it comes to artists, you just have these people that are all on these disparate platforms, and we knew, because we wanted to see this stuff, that other people were out there who, also would love to have a place where they could go and see, people with common interests and appreciate their art. And, these aren't necessarily just artists who, will draw, a ghost or paint, a Sasquatch or something. Most of these artists that we've talked to so far, they have, a deep and abiding respect for the subject matter, because many of them have had paranormal experiences themselves. And I think that really informs their work, and it just gives it an extra air of authenticity that I think people really appreciate.
Yeah, I've always thought about possibly sketching some of the cases and some of the situations that people send to me, or cases I'm involved in with a client. I may start doing that more. I mean, I've thought about it. I've done it occasionally, but, no big deal. But that's very interesting. I'm glad you're doing that. I had asked, I'm writing this book, and if I've already got 2 of the sketches I'm going to put in there. So if there's anything you want to offer, because believe me, there's a lot that can be covered with what's going on in Chicago. So just feel free to do so.
Yeah, well, why don't we can talk off air. But
yeah.
I'm always happy to help. We're here for whatever you need. So yeah, definitely we can work something out with that.
Yeah.
Is oil your... Go ahead, Emily.
I don't have a problem drawing a monster.
Yeah, that's actually fair, because I'm offering Emily services for her. I should probably let her.
Okay.
Lon strikes me as an oils guy.
Yeah. Speaking of the Chicago, we spoke a lot about it on the first part of the show, but today, Rosemary Ellen Guiley presented the Chicago sightings in a lecture at the Mothman Festival, and from what I understand, it was standing room only in there, and that's a pretty good sized place, isn't it, Sean?
Yeah, State Theater is not. It's not a small establishment. It's a decent sized venue, probably 200-300 people in there, so it's a decent audience. And if there's standing room, there's probably additional 50 to 60. So it was a good crowd, I imagine.
Yeah.
And it's a warm building too, no air conditioning.
Oh, is it?
Or toilets. So I mean.
Oh my. Well, she, Rosemary's going to be joining us next Thursday, so I'm quite sure we're going to be discussing a lot of what was said there. I'm sure she got a lot of questions and a lot of inquiries, so we'll just have to wait for that. We did get a report the other day, just before we went on Thursday, concerning an actual encounter of this flying being. What did you, Tobias? What did you make of that?
Well, it's rapidly becoming one of the more interesting encounters to me, and I don't know necessarily if that's just because it's fresh in my mind, but there's a lot of stuff going on there. As a fan personally of folklore and mythology, like I find it fascinating, the idea that this is something that people are talking about on a neighborhood level, which I really, really hope that this is something that Manuel is going to be able to reach out and maybe network a little bit to get more info about, because it sounds like, and this is just in extrapolation, off of the report and what the witness is saying, but it sounds like, this is happening even, more than we're hearing about.
Yeah, and that's what it seemed like. Apparently, the witness stated that more people in the neighborhood have seen this thing, and that there's talk about it. And what's interesting to me is, and I was just reading today in the paper that they were talking about the Hispanic population in Chicago is increased overall by 30%, and these certain neighborhoods, it's almost like, and I know in a little village where this encounter took place, I mean, it's just like being in Mexico, basically. It's interesting. And, the fact that they, their culture and religion and folklore and everything combined with what's going on, I think is going to make it very interesting if we get more reports out of there.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. I mean, and sort of to speak to that idea about their folklore, sort of coloring the narrative of this at a neighborhood level. I mean, I really think that it's such a good example of, as an investigator, you really have to be aware of any pre-existing beliefs, because there's just no escaping them when it comes to investigating this type of phenomenon. One man's Lacusa is another man's, Mothman, really.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's just fascinating.
Well, and the good thing, Manuel is from Southern Texas, so he knows the culture. I mean, and he's Hispanic, and he speaks Spanish. So, I mean, he can relate to the people in the neighborhood. He knows what not to ask and what to ask. And if he can get more witnesses, that's just going to be fantastic.
Oh, definitely. And this is something that Manuel and I had spoken about when I was interviewing him for the feature article we ran. There are just some ground level difficulties that I think that a lot of people aren't aware of when you're trying to investigate in a city like Chicago. Just a couple of things he mentioned specifically where, some of these neighborhoods, you wouldn't want to go monster hunting after dark, and not because of the monster, and, also, just from this latest report here, and this breaks my heart a little bit, but you've got a significant portion of this population who are afraid to speak to any level of authority whatsoever. They don't want to get involved. some of them may not be in the country legally or something, and it just makes it really, really difficult.
Yeah, there's a political
absolutely.
aspect to this. There really is
Yeah.
something we have to think about. And, it's one of the things that frustrates me as I read these reports and see what everybody's doing. And is, there's oftentimes lack of cooperation in larger communities because of that reason. People don't want to stir things up, draw undue attention to themselves. And at times it does seem like it's a scapegoat for skeptics to say, well, see, nobody's really seeing this. It's just a couple crazy people. Maybe it is a lot more. And they're just not coming out for, real everyday reasons.
Yeah, definitely. One of the biggest, I guess I should say most popular questions that I've received from people, is why aren't people filing police reports? Why isn't the media covering this? Why isn't this getting out more? And I'm like, really? What necessarily is the crime here? Like, let's say you were going to call the police. What are you going to say to them? I saw a flying monster. I don't think that's on the books anywhere as being illegal. And, people, they're legitimately concerned sort of for their standing in society, because there is still such a huge cultural stigma attached to, something this far outside of the normal paradigm that, of course, like, more people don't want attention about it. I mean, who would, really?
Yeah, that can be a problem. I just hope he's able to get more witnesses, because this is just too good an opportunity to go wasted. Because and in fact, if people don't get photographs, I hope we can get some sketches at least that.
Yeah, definitely. Any sort of visual representation, I think, can help. We're always happy to help in any way we can, as far as producing any kind of visual aid from witness descriptions. The difficulty there, I think, to me is when you're trying to create a visual representation of something based on an eyewitness description. Like, you're limited by the language available to the witness. You're limited by their perception of what they saw, and so you're sort of trying to decipher the narrative that they've constructed around this event. And it's so often so far outside of what they're capable of describing easily, that you really end up getting, well, even in this Chicago case, you've got some people saying, hey, I think this thing could have been insect-like. You've got people describing it as bird or owl-like. Other people are describing it as bat-like, and I don't know if that necessarily means that you've got an insect like creature, a bat-like creature, and a bird-like creature, or if you've got three people looking at the same thing and just understanding it differently.
Mm-hmm. Something we were discussing on the thread that I want to bring up with you now. We had people in the thread in the task force have been bringing up this situation with Fermi Lab being just outside the city and the accelerator. Well, actually, that accelerator was shut down in 2011. I just found that out today.
Oh, really?
Just because you shut it off doesn't mean you stop.
Well, that's true too. It's a government. Who knows? But the thing's been down since 2011. But they don't. I can't get any information on what they're doing there now.
You should just call.
I did try to call.
So, excuse me, sir.
I tried to call the information. Yeah. Hey, and that's another thing. This sighting at Lincoln Park Zoo. Manuel and I both tried to call the news media department at the zoo, and man, I'm telling you, no one wants to even speak about this thing.
Yeah, I guess that's not surprising to me, I guess. I mean, of course, it's disappointing. I'm just wondering from their perspective, is it that they just don't want to be attached to the sighting? Can they just not afford to have, anything like that attached to their PR image, or are they really trying to hide something? Based on the witness description from that event, though, like there was a crowd, according to the witness. So, I mean, I think it would be really interesting to see if we get any corroborative reports, anything like that. I would love for, institutions and organizations to be a little more cooperative, but I kind of get it from a marketing and public relations standpoint where I guess I just don't see what their motive to be involved would be. Like, they're not going to get anything out of it. So it's possible that they just don't want anything to do with it because, they just have nothing to gain, really.
Well, something else came up yesterday that I found out. That building, that condominium at 1400 North Shore Drive, I had a resident contact me yesterday, and they've been keeping up with what's been going on in Chicago. And he told me, he said, I live in that building. So I went down and talked to the girl who sits at the front desk of the condo every day at the same time that happened, and wanted to know if she had heard anything. She wasn't aware of anything. So he asked her about the videotape, the security tape, and she said, he described where this had happened at. And she said, yeah, I mean, the camera points in that direction. So he told me about it. So I got on the phone and talked to, I eventually got to the head of security. I don't know if the guy's actually head of security, but I know he runs the building. And he did not want to talk about it. He said, I know nothing about it. I don't want to get involved with it. So I don't know. I mean, it's either they saw something or they're just trying to they just don't want to bother with it.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, it could be that. It's just so difficult to try to guess people's motivations. I mean, I don't want to just necessarily jump to the most nefarious explanation for someone being uncooperative when for a lot of these people, it really could be as simple as not wanting to be involved in something that they know carries a huge cultural stigma. I mean, it seems like, if they went public, a lot of these people may have, very little to gain, but a lot to lose, professionally, socially. I wish it didn't work that way, but this is the world we live in.
And we've heard that from witnesses who don't want to be named, don't want anything involved, especially the girl who worked at City Hall. She didn't even want to, I'm lucky. I think we're lucky we got as much as we did out of her. So,
sure.
Yeah. So guys, I know you're going to be involved with the Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Paracon? Is that what it is?
The Milwaukee Paranormal Conference. It's coming up next month.
Okay.
From the 13th through the 15th. We'll be there on the 14th and 15th. And on the 15th, I've got a little talk that I'm going to do actually on this subject, on the Chicago, flying humanoid sightings, which, I think people are really excited about this subject. I mean, I know you get inquiries all the time. I honestly, Rosemary's experience at the Mothman conference sort of speaks for itself. So I think it'll be a good opportunity locally for us to, give out some good information. We're very lucky to be a part of this and to be able to, to work with, so many great people and have the kind of insights that we get to have into this phenomenon. And we really look forward to sharing that with everybody.
Well, what I'm really interested in is that when you go up there, you hear anything about the sightings in Milwaukee.
And I've been meaning to ask you about that. Now, these sightings in Milwaukee, I am woefully ignorant of these, unfortunately. I haven't read anything about him, I would love, if we don't have time to talk about it now, great. But if you have something you could send me at least, I'd be very interested, because that's practically next door to us. We're about an hour and a half away in Madison. So I mean, that's a short trip.
Well, I received information from Ken Gerhardt. Now he got, and Ken Gerhardt, he got 2 sighting reports from Milwaukee that he was looking into. Now he didn't get specific with me, but he told me that it's very similar to what we've been reporting in Chicago. But okay, the one caveat is that they had green eyes.
Green eyes.
Now, I had no idea what that's all about.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, so I only know of the 2 that he mentioned to me. Now, somebody else who lives just south of Milwaukee told me that they had heard of a sighting, but, it was kind of a word of mouth thing, and it wasn't, nothing specific. Right. So now, of course, there's a somewhat famous, well-known case in La Crosse with the Bat Squatch case that Linda Godfrey wrote about and investigated. And I have no idea what that was. Now, Linda and I have talked about it, and she seems to think that it's very similar to what's being seen in Chicago. So, I don't know. Another interesting aspect to these sightings is that there have been pterodon sightings in and around Chicago for years.
Right.
So I don't know if this is related or not.
It could be. It seems like, and this is, I guess, where we go back to the reliability of eyewitness testimony in being able to discern real specifics or make distinctions between sighting reports. I mean, it's to my mind possible that all of these people are seeing the same thing and just describing it slightly differently. Although I will say this also, it's really interesting to me that we would have reports coming out of Milwaukee, which of course is another city famously on the coast of Lake Michigan. So at a certain point, I started asking myself, what is it about Lake Michigan that seems to surround it with this almost a radius of paranormal activity? We've got the even for this current flying humanoid flap, we've got reports coming from the other side of Lake Michigan into Indiana and stuff. This seems to be centered on this great lake. Do you think there could be something to that? It seems weird to me.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it very well may be. With this, there's the Lake Michigan Triangle theory, where there's an area of the lake where there have been a lot of disappearances of boats, ships, aircraft. Not unlike the Bermuda Triangle as far as description of what happens. But there have also been a lot of strange occurrences on the lakeshore all around the lake. I mean, from anywhere from Milwaukee down south around up past Gary into the other side of the lake. I mean, into Michigan. So I don't I don't doubt there may be a connection. This sighting that we had in Kenwood was interesting for the fact that the witness stated that her and her husband jogged along the lakeshore a lot and had seen these, what she described as reptile-like beings sticking out of the lake. Right. So I mean, I don't know what that's all about. I mean, she really couldn't get specific because she saw the head, and it had like a reptile head, but the rest of the body was submerged, so she couldn't see much.
Well, I mean, at that point, she's basically describing a traditional, say Lake Champlain or Loch Ness, like lake monster, right?
Yeah. So I don't know what she's saying, but that lake. If you go back to Project Blue, Butch can tell you. If you go back into Project Blue Book, and look at some of the sightings, and I'm talking about with humanoids involved on that lake, especially in front of Chicago. There are a lot happened. I mean, I have at least 7 or 8 that I have dug up that have a humanoid sighting anywhere from the 30s up into modern time of some type of humanoid sighting on that lakeshore. It runs the gamut of what it is. So, is it what's we're dealing with now? I don't know. I mean, the descriptions were kind of bizarre back then. And another thing, actually, some of these stories hadn't made the local media back then.
Yeah,
which kind of makes me laugh because we can't get anybody right anything now.
Well, there's the one guy in the Chicago Tribune, right? But that wasn't. A lot of people weren't as offended as I was, I think, by his coverage, but it seemed a little flippant to me. When you speak to people, and I get it. It's easy to make fun of stuff. It's easy to laugh at people, but when you speak to someone who has seen something like this and they're terrified, like this is something that really impacts their life, believe in it or not. People deserve a little more respect, I think, than to, be made fun of in a national media platform. It just seems really unfortunate to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I agree. And I got back to that writer. I mean, and he said, well, I was disappointed in that you thought of, the way you thought about it. And I told him, I said, I think you just made made a comical light of it. And I wasn't really pleased with the way it was presented because what we're trying to do is serious. And he said, oh, I understand. I said, well, whatever. It's out there, so there's not much I can do about that.
Oh no, I don't for a second blame you. You didn't
Yeah.
write. You're doing your best, to get the word out to people and to talk about it in a serious manner. And then at that point, the impetus is on the self-proclaimed objective journalist to take it seriously or not.
Well, we'll find out with this Playboy article coming out. I have people tell me that the guy that's writing it is on, is up and up. So hopefully we're going to get a decent article.
Did he talk to you before he wrote it, or
what's that?
Did the guy writing it? Did he speak to you, or like?
Oh yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
good.
we had a couple interviews. Oh yeah. He was up front. I mean, he wasn't, it didn't seem like he was out to disprove it or try to make it look like some type of bizarre, bunch of bizarre people out there looking around for monsters.
Sure.
So, but I guess I'll know when that gets printed, if it's even accepted by the publisher. But we'll
sure.
see.
Yeah, there's always a certain number of hurdles you have to get through.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm not even asking necessarily for people to. I'm not even asking for their belief really, because I guess to my mind, even if there's not a monster, even if it. Like this is just a fascinating example of some sort of heretofore unknown psychological phenomenon, which I don't believe that's what it is. But even if that was the case, that is still something that is worthy of serious discussion and shouldn't be made light of, frankly.
Well, that's true. That's true. I just want to know what it is for one thing, but the fact that we're getting all these sightings in such a short period of time in an area as large, even though it is one general area, but it's in a large area. It's fascinating. And, like I said, I really don't, I keep trying to rack my brain over if there's been anything like this other than, UFO sightings, which have had trips like this, but
sure.
As far as cryptozoology, nah.
Yeah, what do you really got? Honestly, I mean, you've got I mean, even the 1965 to 66 Point Pleasant Mothman. Didn't have more than a handful of sightings. I mean, well, in that period, really.
Right.
Certainly, the 40 plus we're up to now in Chicago. So yeah, it's sort of unprecedented, really. I that's what makes it so difficult, I guess, to me, trying to make any sense of it. I don't have a whole lot to compare it to, as far as like this level of activity. So who knows?
Well, Butch, and you can kind of talk about UFO flaps and how they come and go. And in fact, they don't normally even last as long as 6 months, what we're dealing with here in Chicago.
No, the definition, first of all, the definition of a flap is 7 to 10 days of multi-witness sightings of the same thing. That hasn't happened in a long, long, long time. The last flap in Philadelphia area, that would have been 2008, I believe, and that was more Me Too-isms than it was a flap, because it was like people from one side of Philadelphia at the airport were seeing something that people up in Upper Bucks County were seeing, which was impossible. And then you had newspaper reporters and some investigators on the scene walking up to people and saying, "Hey, would you like to be on TV or radio? Did you see anything?" Well, of course they're going to say they saw something. And then when we projected out, we did a chart on all of the media, radio, television, newsprint, internet, that came out during the flap, and matched it up to the sightings. It was almost identical. There was a report maybe in the newspaper of a sighting in, say, South Philadelphia, and 10 minutes later there were 5 reports of a sighting in South Philadelphia at the exact same time. So the flaps are what they are. They can be genuine, but usually they're only seen once, maybe by a certain group of, a small group of people. But when you go back to Project Blue Book, like you said, especially in that Great Lakes area, there are quite a number of sightings reported in that area back in the day, where you had reptilians, humanoids, things coming in and out of the water, which there still are some reports like that. And a handful of those reports, I think 6, were registered in Project Blue Book as unsolved, unknown.
Yeah.
But whatever's going on, it's just like we talked the other day on the phone, where I said something that just keeps bugging at me. Is like wherever we have these sightings, whether it's this thing flying above the lakes and above Chicago, or the bipedal canines running around in the Lichen Loop in Pennsylvania, or certain areas of, or not only our state, but other states where they have multiple sightings of Bigfoot. One thing that just stands out in almost every report, with very few exceptions, is that there's water close by. It's either a lake, a pond, a stream, a creek, a river, but there's always water. And there, in most cases, there is also hiding places, like a lot of the Bigfoot areas. It's a very dense forest and stuff like that. Here in the Lichen Loop, we got a ton of caves and abandoned buildings. Over in Chicago, you got all these underground tunnels. So, although I'm not all that involved with the guys on the ground in Chicago, I spend a lot of my time looking back and trying to do the investigative part of the whys and wherefores, and what could it be, and where could it hide, what's it eating, how far back have these sightings gone, and they go back quite a ways. And I was surprised, not only in Blue Book, but there was another, and the book just went right through my head like an arrow. There was another book out on strange sightings near water, and it was down in the Delaware, New Jersey, southern Jersey area, where objects were seen in the sky, but at the same time objects were seen in the sky, beings were seen walking along beaches and along outcrop areas along the water. So what's going on in Chicago, I think, has been going on a long time in a lot of areas. It's just that in Chicago, you've got so many people. It's not like the little remote Delaware or, the Lichen Loop in Pennsylvania, where we have very few people living. This is a metropolitan area where a lot of people see what they see. And I think a lot of people don't talk about it because, they, first of all, they don't want to lose that paycheck. They don't want their name in the paper and having to go in and explain to their boss what they saw and him going like, this isn't good for the company. You need to find some other work somewhere. So self-preservation, I think, is what's keeping a lot of people from talking.
Yeah, I don't doubt that for a second. Well, going back to the case that Lon had mentioned earlier about the woman, who worked for the city. Yeah, I mean, if ever you were going to lose your city job over something, it was going, it would be coming out publicly stating that you had seen, a bat-like flying humanoid over Lake Michigan or something. So there's definitely something to that, and I had somebody. One of our audience members recently had asked me if I thought that this could be a manifestation of mass hysteria. And, that's a real popular explanation amongst a lot of skeptics. When you get any kind of big monster sighting, as I'm sure you guys know. But, how many of these witnesses had ever heard of this prior to their sighting? As far as I know, not very many. Right? I mean,
no, it hadn't been a whole lot.
Yeah, if they hadn't even heard of it before, what are the chances that they're being influenced by stories of it? I mean, obviously zero. So, I mean, that's one of the most interesting things about this sighting platform is, you sort of got this process in place where somebody who's never even heard of this, sees this flying creature that they can't explain. So they go to the internet. They Google it, they find, one of our websites and report it. And before they do that, they've never heard of the thing, just have no experience with it. So that to me, I mean, it lends its own credibility, I think. Just why would somebody make that up, really?
Has anybody out in Chicago checked with O'Hare or Chicago Midway for copies of radar transcripts for the particular days of the sightings?
I haven't. No, I haven't.
I mean, when you look at the area on the map, I mean, these things are seen right smack almost in the middle, of O'Hare International and Chicago Midway International Airport airspace, and that would be covered by the radar.
Yeah, a lot of these sightings are within Midway and O'Hare. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Now, do they have to be flying at a certain height to be picked up by radar?
Anything over 750 feet.
Oh, well, they may be lower than that. I don't know. I mean, it's worth looking into. Billy Bance's sighting was pretty high up, and it was definitely within Midway. Well, all Cicero is within Midway airspace. Mm-hmm. So that part of Chicago. So that might be something to look into.
Yeah, something Manuel had mentioned when I spoke to him too was that a lot of these, especially along the lakefront there, these sightings are taking place in indefinite no-fly zones. You're not allowed to have drones or anything like that in these areas. So I wonder, is the city relying on, somebody reporting a drone in this area, or are these, or are they monitoring these areas in some way to enforce these laws? And if they are monitoring these areas in some way to enforce these laws, then is there data out there that could help us in this investigation?
Well, here in Pennsylvania, you can't fly a drone within 5 miles of any airport. Hmm. And if they catch you, it's not good.
Oh, yeah.
the object that the people are reporting is definitely not a drone. In no way, shape, or form is it a drone. And another thing that Manuel had said earlier on in the investigation, like, the police are all over that shoreline. And then you got the police out on the lake, you got Coast Guard out there. I mean, I just think they shouldn't have any problem getting that information from the airports, because every time we've ever asked the airport for a radar transcript, we may have to wait a day or two or three, but we always got it. We didn't have to even do a FOIA. So, it may behoove them to, just get a hold of somebody at O'Hare or either over Chicago Midway and, see if, and it'll only show up as a little glitch. And, they might chalk it off as a bird.
Sure.
Or, a trash bag in the sky or something. But even though it's not a plane, it's something, especially if it correlates with the date and time that the report, stated it happened.
Well, guys, one thing you don't need a FOIA request for is to listen to Arcane Radio on WCJV, Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York, and iHeartRadio.
We may as well follow that up with a question, Chief.
I think you just threw him off his game.
I think so, too. So Tobias and Emily, are there any other cases that you've been involved with recently, or it doesn't even have to be recently, that you think is of interest that you can talk about?
Oh yeah, definitely. We like to get out as often as possible, really, and write feature articles and speak to people and just get out there. So honestly, recently, as I'm sure you can imagine, the whole Chicago business has been keeping us pretty busy. But we have a couple of our favorite cases, from the past that we usually like to talk about. One of them actually was in the Al Ringling Mansion in Baraboo, Wisconsin. So that's about an hour north of us. It's a beautiful little town. It's more of a vacation town these days. But it was home to the Ringling Brothers Circus, the late 19th, early 20th century.
Yeah.
In that era. And so the eldest brother, the eldest Ringling brother, Al Ringling, had built this beautiful mansion out there. And it just so happens that a friend of ours, owns it, lives there with his family, and they give tours and things. And, we had heard through the grapevine that people had been reporting unusual experiences there. So we went and took a tour of it. And, it's a beautiful building. But, we did have one really unusual experience there. And it happened to Emily. So I'm going to let her explain it, especially because I don't understand that well how her camera equipment works. And it dealt specifically with that.
Right. So basically, I'll get into what happened, but my flash went off in a room when it definitely should not have been able to go off. It was completely, so I use a digital SLR, so that stands for digital single light reflex, and that's big fancy cameras basically to most people. And how a flash attaches is there's an attachment up top, and you kind of like slide the flash on top of it to a part called the hot shoe. And I had not had my flash on my camera body at the time, and you can have those go off, but you have to have batteries in them. It did not have batteries in it, which would make it impossible for this flash to go off.
Except for it happened.
It happened. So that's what is very weird about it, because I thought like I was going crazy or something, because I was just like, wait, I didn't put batteries in this. Why is this doing this? I just took them out.
Right.
So that was quite strange.
Well, it was funny too, because initially, I look over to her and I'm just like, Emily, could you stop goofing off? Like we're on this tour or whatever. And yeah, no, I mean, she had the batteries out, and this flash keeps going off. There are a couple interesting aspects to this, though. So I
something with the wiring of the...
Sure. Like I don't know that we need to go with a paranormal explanation initially, because, well, one, there was a pretty sizable lightning storm that night.
Yeah.
And two, this building has its original wiring. So, I don't know. Is it possible that, there were just some weird electromagnetic fields in that house that night, from the combination of a lightning storm with really old, not insulated, very well wiring? I don't know. But yeah, it was pretty weird. And once we figured out, once I figured out that it was happening, it was pretty strange. It was actually in the same area as one of the most interesting apparition sighting reports that we had heard from the now owner of that mansion. As he told us, he had one of his friends over, and he was standing. Now, when you walk into this mansion, it's an old-fashioned mansion. So you've got your foyer. And then, immediately to your left, you have a greeting room, and immediately to your right, you have what used to be Al Ringling's office. And so these both have, wide open entryways. And so he was standing in the office and speaking to his friend who was in the foyer facing him. And suddenly his friend goes, hey, Joe, that's the owner's name, Joe. Is there supposed to be like somebody here? Like are you guys having one of your period events or something? They do a lot of historical events and stuff there. And Joe naturally is like, well, no. Why would you ask? And she says, well, I just saw somebody in the mirror behind you, like walking behind me. Yeah, again. I don't know what to make of that, but it certainly seems weird. So yeah, and this would have been right in the same area as that. So.
Yeah. And even stopped. Like, I think there was even a moment where it was starting to go off, so I pulled myself out into the main foyer, trying to figure out what's going on. Stepped back in, and it even started up again,
right.
Which was a little strange to me. That it, it's just like, there's no batteries in here. What's going on? And I went back to walk around, and yeah, I don't know. I can't imagine what my face must have looked like at the time. Just like confused beyond all belief. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was something else, really. And then I guess our other favorite, well, my other favorite, was a little local legend that we dug up about the Beast of 92. So, Wisconsin isn't famous for Bigfoot sightings, but we definitely have some. And, in nearby Mount Horeb, which is, how far would you say that is? Like maybe
40 minutes?
40, yeah, sure. 40 minutes
west?
East. No,
I think it's west.
Could be west. Okay. 40 minutes outside of Madison. There's a Mount Horeb. And just outside of it, you've got this fairly large park. It's called Donald Park. And, there have been people over the years there, who have reported strange incidents, the sort of typical tree knocks, loud screams, something really just large moving through the brush. And we do get some black bear down here every once in a while. We've had quite a resurgence over the past 30 years or so. But we don't get a ton. And as you all probably well know, when a bear moves, they don't generally walk on their hind legs. They're going to drop to all fours. So when you see something walking on two legs that's as large as a bear in the woods, it's probably not a bear. And so we had gone out there to check it out because we like to get the lay of the land whenever possible. When we're going to report on any anomalous activity nearby. And the woods themselves had a pretty ominous feel to them, honestly. Like there's just something.
They're very thick.
Yeah.
And like for being like I would think that it's a Dane County park. That's the county we're in.
Right.
It's very well. I think they would consider it to be well groomed.
Sure.
But you can it's very easy to like get off a trail and wander off and get lost in there.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and I don't know if it was just, that I had sort of primed myself ahead of time. But yeah, I definitely had that hair on the back of my neck feeling the whole time we were there. We didn't see anything weird, but we had talked to a friend of ours then who had decided to go out the next day. And
it was a couple weeks
later. Was it weeks later? Okay,
yeah.
Sorry. So who had gone out just after us. And, he did what we didn't do and went on some trails that were closed. And, he found, and I can send you this picture after the show, but, he found what, by all accounts, appears to be a large, print in the mud of this trail, which, again, is closed, so nobody was supposed to be on it. I don't believe for a second that he hoaxed it.
No.
If somebody else was going to be out there hoaxing it, why they would do it on the closed trail that likely no one is going to be on would be beyond me. So, yeah, that's another one. Maybe there was a reason I felt like we were being watched the whole time. Who knows? But yeah, definitely weird stuff.
Wow. Well, your part of the country is well known for a lot of bizarre cryptids. There's no doubt about that. Wisconsin
and cheese.
I mean, anyway,
you're surprised after all these years?
No, I'm not. I mean, it's just. Anyway,
cheese can be very haunting.
Oh,
of course, the Dogman upright canine sightings, the large number of Bigfoot sightings, and weird flying beings as well. I mean, they're up there as well in Wisconsin, and it's interesting. When I started working on the blog, well, I wouldn't say when I first started. I'd say maybe 2009 up to 2012. I'd say most of the crypto sightings I was receiving were coming from the upper Midwest, and in particular, Wisconsin.
Huh.
For some reason, we were getting a ton of them out there. I'll be honest with you, I don't get that many out of there now.
Really?
Now, why that's going on, I don't know.
They've migrated.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. But, there does seem to be certain hot spots where I would get a lot of cases and then it would kind of wane. For a long time there, and I still believe it's probably one of the most active areas in the country is the area south from San Antonio south into Brownsville and Laredo, that area down there. They call that the Hill Country, I believe. But man, I have gotten so many weird reports from that area, well, including the Four Corners out in New Mexico and Arizona. There are just certain hot spots. But I know JC's not out there anymore, so we don't get a lot of reports out there anymore. But it just still seems that there's certain areas where it's always active. And of course, now with us, though we do live here in the state, we get a lot of reports from Pennsylvania as well. So I've always, but Wisconsin has always provided a lot of bizarre incidents, no doubt of that.
Well, and I like to think that we have a nice broad selection of Fortean categories,
yes.
too. We've had UFOs and UFO contactee cases, abductions, cryptids, hauntings. We dabble in a little bit of everything up here.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, one of my favorites, and I'm sure you guys have heard of this one, but still, the Joe Simonson case was in Eagle River, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was the guy who reported that this craft lands in the yard outside of his farmhouse. He goes outside. They point to an empty container. He figures out that they would like some water. He brings them this water back, and and they look like he described them as dressed or resembling in appearance Frenchmen, I believe, and it looked to him like they're cooking something on a griddle in their flying saucer, and so they, in payment for this water that he had so helpfully retrieved for them, they give him one of these cosmic flapjacks or whatever they're cooking up in there, which he had actually later, because I believe they gave him 3 of them, and he tasted one, said it tasted like garbage. He had given another one for examination, and I want to say it was basically just water, like buckwheat flour and grease or something. Like those were all of the components to it. And I laugh a little bit, I guess, because it is so far out there. But much more tragically, in interviews later, Joe Simonson, he was, by all accounts, completely sincere. And I really think because he was given, he was not treated well over this, and he I think he regretted it for most of the rest of his life, ever coming out, about this story. But it's always been one of my favorites. It has a lot of good Fortean aspects to it. Like you could draw the comparison, between his encounter and say like traditional encounters with fairies. Like there was some sort of exchange. He gave them something, they gave him something in return. That's something that we see a lot in fairy stories and things of that nature. And it's just been one of my favorites from a kid, like ever since I was a kid. But yeah, right here in good old Wisconsin.
I think my family, I don't think my family goes up in vacations in Eagle River every year.
Yeah. So
it's just interesting that it's so close to home and that a story came from there. Yeah, well, I think that's something important to remember too. And it's something that I really try to drive home with people is that, these sightings aren't happening elsewhere. They're not happening somewhere outside of our, little bubble. I mean, these are happening to normal people in places we've been, all of us, everybody, everywhere, and it's I think it's really important for people to remember that before they start, ridiculing people, for instance.
Well, that Simonton case was interesting to me as well because, for one thing, up there in Vilas County, it was the judge in Vilas County that actually did the investigation, Frank Carter. And he's the one that really started looking into it. He's the one that he sent the pancakes off to NICAP and had them analyzed. I mean, he bought into Simonton's story, and then eventually the Air Force sent G. Allen Hynek up there, right. And he looked into it as well. And I think that's probably where a lot of the case went south. I don't know if Hynek really took it serious.
Sure.
But from what I understand, and the information I got, and Butch, you may know more than I do, that, this guy was considered a respected citizen. And, I guess because since it was a small community and that it was well known for tourism, that a lot of people used to vacation there in the summer, that they didn't want, and they still do. I don't think they wanted to, at that time, push the UFO story, let alone a bunch of aliens cooking pancakes out of their spacecraft. So I don't know. I don't know if that had something to do with it or what.
After Hynek got done with it, he was basically ostracized.
Yeah, well, that's what I figured.
And it was in the ufology realm, it was just written off as a crackpot. Although, like you said, when you read his statements, he sounds very sincere.
Yeah,
he did to me. I mean, yeah.
He clearly had nothing to gain and everything to lose, and he did lose quite a bit. I want to say that the official Air Force explanation ended up being that they concluded that he had some sort of waking dream, essentially, because that's a thing that happens to people a lot, So he had some psychological effect that they essentially invented on the spot to explain, his story away. Well,
he was actually blamed for making the pancakes.
Yeah. Oh, I guess. I mean, if you're saying that he essentially, had a reality, then of course, like who else was gonna make them? Mm-hmm. So,
well, if you ever read the W files from the Unexplained Phenomena in Wisconsin, now that book has got some really interesting cases in it. Anybody that's into ufology, I suggest they look at that because this case is really detailed in there. But there are a lot of cases in Wisconsin, a lot of weird ones as well.
Sure. Yeah, I want to say, boy, and I'm going to have to go look this up at some point because I don't remember it that well, but I do remember a case, a good physical evidence case from a police officer in Wisconsin. I want to say it was one of the only reported deaths involving a UFO sighting. It was something like there was physical evidence that his car had been his squad car, in fact, had been nearby something very, very high. It had a lot of heat damage, and then he died mysteriously, like several days later. Butch, is that ringing any bells with you? Because otherwise, I'm going to drive myself crazy until I Google this.
No, it does ring a bell. I'm trying to. When you were talking about, I was trying to think what the explanation they came up with, which was absolutely bizarre. I just don't remember. But I remember.
You're not thinking about George Wheeler case, are you?
I could be.
I think you got it, Lon. I think that was it. But
yeah, I'm not too familiar with it. That's another one of Hynek's cases, to be honest with you.
Well, there was a case of deputy sheriff driving down a rural road, sees a light. The light comes out the car, hits the car, knocks him unconscious, sends the car into a ditch. The car was actually bought at an auction, and it's been kept by an officer of the county. And when you look at the damage to the vehicle, I mean, how'd that happen?
Right,
you have, then you have the case in New York State where, and there's not a whole lot written on that. I do have a file on it somewhere, but a trooper on normal patrol on the New York Thruway sees a flashing light up ahead about 3 miles. He starts to slow down, thinking it's probably somebody broke down. As he gets up on top of this thing, he sees that it's not a car, it's not a truck, it's kind of an odd-shaped, almost like an inverted triangle, whatever that means. And he steps out of the car, and there are no traffic in the area, and he winds up dead alongside the highway. And they said he was hit during a traffic stop. But when you looked at the medical examiner's very few notes about it, just about every bone in this guy's body was broken twice. And to do that and having no outside damage to the skin is unbelievable.
So there weren't any abrasions. I mean, did they even find tire tracks or skid marks or anything?
No skid marks, no damage. Matter of fact, the only part of his uniform that showed any signs of injury was around the collar where a small amount of blood had exited the mouth and nose. I was a police officer. I know what these scenes look like. I've had people hit by trucks. I've had people walk out in front of trucks. I've had accidents more than I care to remember. But to have somebody have that kind of damage to the inside and nothing on the outside is truly bizarre.
Yeah, and just speaking of bizarre, now that George Wheeler case, I don't know that we ever even got a cause of death for him, because he was just after his experience, like literally 3 days later, he's having headaches, he's not feeling well, and he goes into the doctor. Doctor can't figure it out, and and not long after that, he's dead. So
didn't they write? I'm sorry, but didn't they write that off as a stroke?
Oh, it could be.
From what my records say here, it said as his health rapidly deteriorated for causes his doctors could not determine, Wheeler repeatedly told them, to their disbelief, that he was dying from the mysterious effects of eternal energies caused by alien beings. Within 6 months after his April encounter, Officer George Wheeler died of unknown causes. So that had to be, was 6 months afterwards. So
sure.
I don't know. I mean, they didn't really know. I don't, I can't, at the time I did the research, I couldn't find a cause of death. So I don't know.
I wouldn't doubt that somebody later on, I guess. I mean, it's very easy, especially for a lot of hardline skeptics and debunkers to go, and just write things off much later. So I don't wonder if maybe somebody was just like, oh, that was a stroke. So what if all of the doctors that examined him were baffled? It was a stroke. Trust me, I'm a skeptic. I know everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one thing I'm certain about is that you don't have to have a stroke to listen to WCJV, Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York, and iHeartRadio. Arcane Radio, folks. It's 9 o'clock.
He's amazing.
This is trucking right along, guys. Some great stuff going on. And the chat room is blowing up with the story that they just posted in there, the Wheeler event.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff, guys. Just incredible stuff. How do you write this stuff, Lon?
Can't write it. I just love it, man.
I would love to be creative enough to come up with most of these things on my own, but instead we're just stuck in trying to investigate it.
Well, and that's the thing with being a Fortean is that you're kind of a benign skeptic to begin with, right? And you always kind of look at everything with a slight skepticism, and some of this stuff just blows your mind. Like I was a lot more skeptical, and I freely admit this, before I started working with Lon and sure, getting into Phantoms and Monsters and reading this stuff. And over time, either I'm becoming more insane by spending more time with Lon, or there's just so much material out there that really makes one think, by God, there's some really interesting things and some things that just can't be easily dismissed or easily explained. And I'm sure you guys, stumble upon that even more so with some of the work you're doing.
You're absolutely right. I don't want to give people the idea that, we're just sort of wide-eyed, absolute believers without investigating anything. And that's definitely not the case, because you pretty much nailed it as far as being a Fortean. I mean, it really is about trying to not exclude any data is really what it gets down to. I mean, Charles Fort pretty famously had equal disrespect for religion and science in his day, because to his mind, neither one was doing a particularly thorough job of explaining anything. And I don't know that so much has changed, frankly, when it comes to, all of the weird events that people just kind of want to go away because it doesn't fit into their day-to-day, Joe working guy paradigm, unfortunately. But it's not going away.
I think too, like it's with anything, nobody wants to, I mean, just think about like in mainstream, like people tend to like not want to be affiliated with anything weird. So they're judged a certain way. And I think that, is another level, like past Forteana, but like if somebody experiences something and they can't shake it, like I know I'm probably just repeating you, Toby, but
no, I of course absolutely agree with that. It's obviously you want to be skeptical, but at a certain point, there's just so much data that after a while, skepticism gives way to, at the very least, it doesn't have to be total acceptance, but it has definitely given way, at least for me, to I can't help but entertain a lot of the more interesting theories behind what could be causing a lot of the phenomena on which we report, because frankly, none of the mundane theories and explanations are doing it for me anymore. They don't explain anything. So,
well, it's boring.
Indeed,
it's boring.
I'm right along with you there.
Well, as years go by, you'll understand that most of what you hear, you kind of want to believe it as you go on. You really do. I hear weird stuff all the time, and it's just hard to imagine that of some of the stuff I do get and then get involved with. And, something I originally will believe is, no way, this is happening. I'll play along, but we'll see where it goes. And then invariably it turns out that something comes up to where, I believe that did happen.
Well, listen,
That's
it's so much
like
fun to believe, though, right? Like, that's where the fun's at, is the believing part.
Yeah, but, that can be an impediment sometimes.
The rest is
The
work.
story. The story with me and David. David Eckhart.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to David almost every day for almost 6 months until I really started to believe what he was telling me. And as time went on, and it's not that I was, was trying to believe him. I was being open-minded, but I was being skeptical as well. But the evidence that he was presenting to me and the way he was explaining it to me, it just opened my mind and opened my eyes a bit to what is really going on. And, I was about the same time I was working with the RV stuff too. And you remember that. So, it's almost like I was really starting to realize a lot more things, and it's helped. It's kind of it's helped me to believe in a lot of things I probably wouldn't have believed in a while back.
Well, we are getting to that final part of the show tonight, where we it's been an incredible conversation with you guys, Emily and Tobias. Thank you so much for coming on with us and discussing a Singular Fortean and your guys' experience. It's been a great pleasure for us.
Well, honestly, thank you very much for having us. I would say that the pleasure has definitely been ours.
Definitely.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Butch, Lon, any final thoughts for our wonderful guests tonight?
Well, we talk to them every day, so we'll be keeping abreast, and they'll be keeping abreast of what's going on. But it was an interesting conversation. They've got a good idea of what we're dealing with, and we'll just keep on going with it and see what comes up. hopefully we're going to get some answers. And I believe we probably will. I think something's going to bust loose here sometime soon.
Sure.
I just get that feeling something's going to materialize that, you know, I don't know if it's going to be something to prove or something to disprove, but whatever it is, you know, we'll take it as it comes.
Emily, Tobias, tell folks where they can reach you at.
Right. Well, if you want to check out the Singular Fortean Society, you can go to singularfortean.com. Otherwise, if you're in the Milwaukee area next month, check us out at the Milwaukee Paranormal Conference from the 13th through the 15th.
And we are also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Yeah, you can find us on Twitter, Tumblr. If it's a social media platform, we're on it.
Very good. We're all socially active here. It's a great thing. Folks, you've been listening to Arcane Radio on WCJV, Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York, iHeartRadio. Catch the podcast dropping the next day. Go to arcaneradio.com for information on that. Click on Archive Shows. Got some great programming here on WCJV. We got next week Cryptid Kid, our good friend Colin Schneider. He's going to be talking with Christopher O'Brien. That's going to be Monday night. Go to WCJVradio.com for the full lineup of great shows coming up. Paranormal Entertainment, Definitive Talk Radio, you name it, it's here on WCJV. And, of course, thank you very much to Cindy and Dita and our great friends over here on the network. We greatly appreciate everything they do for us each and every week. The great bunch of hosts over here. It's one big happy family. We're so great to be a part of it. Of course, you can go check out Lon, phantomsandmonsters.com, Butch at euforcop.com, and I got it right this time, Butch. How about that?
Amazing.
That's right. Folks, I'm Sean, the Fork Chop Forker. You've been listening to Arcane Radio. Before we leave tonight, one thing I do want to point out to everybody is, make sure you're checking out some of these other great programs out here as well on WCJVradio.com. Thank you very much this week, folks. Well, next week we'll be back with Rosemary Ellen Guiley. We'll be doing a Mothman Festival recap. Going to be a good show. And as Butch, take us out. What do you always say, my friend?
Keep your eyes to the skies.
Good night, everybody.